This is the UR Business Network.
And the show is brought to you today by the New York Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 25 years. Find us at NYREJ.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nyrej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nyrej.com. And we have on the phone with us is Barry Schmidt, is the founder and principal of Schmidt Construction Consulting. Good morning, Barry. Or good afternoon, I think.
It is afternoon now, Rick.
It is afternoon. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show. And why don't you tell us a little bit about Schmidt Construction Consulting and what kind of projects and you manage, things of that nature?
Okay. Well, we're a construction consulting firm, so we advise owners or, let's say, stakeholders in construction projects. Typically, it's the entity that's writing the checks for the construction company and the architect and the engineers. So we come in and attempt to improve the results they experience on construction projects in terms of saving time and money and mitigating their risk.
So you come into the project before it starts?
Frankly, it could be at any stage. When we're needed, if we get a call, we can come in beginning, middle, or end. But ideally, the very beginning would be ideal so we can add the most value.
Do you work with...
That can be even... Sure.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask, do you work with the general contractor?
Yes, we work for, what I would characterize as the owner.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always an owner of a property. It could be a tenant or some other interested party, a principal party who has a stake in the construction results. But the entity is usually hiring that general contractor or construction manager. So we sit on the same side as the table as the owner, protecting their interests and attempting to get better results and mitigate the risk. On construction projects, usually there's a host of different characters involved, maybe dozens. You have architects, engineers, mechanical, structural, the general contractor, and maybe a dozen or more subcontractors. And, of course, everyone naturally is operating, with their own interest in mind, their own bottom line, as everyone does in business. But not always is the owner either experienced enough or can invest the time to make sure that their interests are being represented. And usually that happens when everyone is acting and communicating in, as harmonious a manner as possible. And that's our role. We come in and attempt to coordinate all the different parties and get us all marching in a straight line with our eye on the goal, which is the best interest for the owner in terms of completing on time and on budget and preempting mistakes and delays and overruns.
So, Barry, would you have any say in the hiring of the different subcontracts?
I'm going to ask the same question.
Yeah. Oh, God, we're thinking alike?
I know.
That's not good. So, would you have any say in that?
Yes, it depends on the needs of the client, but typically, yes. Sometimes construction projects or the contract is set up, it's called a general contract, where you have one contractor who takes all the risk for a fixed price, and then they in turn, internally in their black box, have the, the legal right and permission to hire whoever they want to get it done, as long as they're meeting their commitment, their fixed commitment under a general contract. Another way to do it is what's called construction management approach, where the construction manager is basically a general contractor and they're working for a fee on a cost-plus basis. So in that scenario, usually it's an open book, and I, as the owner's representative, will be involved with the bidding of the subcontractors. And that is a very crucial, phase in the construction project, because that's really when the costs are going to be determined during the bidding process. And the better a project or a subcontract is purchased in terms of completeness and lack of duplication and lack of omission, the better that initial cost will be. And even if there are changes later, the final cost will be less if the project is purchased properly. And again, that process doesn't always go, under the best interests for the owner. It may go for the best interests of contractors and their relationships.
Right.
So there's definitely value to be added.
So, Barry, do you actually oversee the budget and the scheduling of each of these different projects, or is that mainly the general contractor's job, and your job is to kind of make sure, that you and the owner see the same cost and schedule as the general contractor?
Well, again, some projects, and depending on how the contract's set up, or it could be open book and transparent, and others maybe would be characterized as closed book. So I'm sitting on the owner's side of the table, so I see what the owner sees, and I may be able to dig in a little deeper due to my familiarity with the way the process works, so the owner can see more than they'd otherwise see. So if it's an open book process, we can drill down and get into the weeds and see and really control the costs and the final costs and the decisions made on the project. But if it's, let's say, a lump sum general contract, we may not see everything that goes on underneath. And the pros and cons to either approach, actually. And it depends on a lot of factors, and one of which is how quickly the design is completed and how fast does the owner want to finish and get completed versus let's take a little longer and make sure our budget is the primary concern, not the schedule per se. And usually it's a balancing act between the two, time and money.
When you say owners, do you mean, is it both sectors, private and public? Do you work with both, or is it just strictly one or the other?
We've had occasion to work with both private sector and public sector clients. We had a subcontract a few years ago with another project management firm in Boston, and they held a regional contract with the United States Federal Government General Services Administration. And we here locally in New York and New Jersey provided project management services for the federal government. And so that's one example of public sector work. And however, the majority of the work we do is private sector, but it can go either way.
So the public sector job that you did, you're probably still waiting for the payment of that that you did last year, right?
Yeah. That's funny, and everyone, talks about how the government is dysfunctional, but I'll tell you, and nobody disagrees with me when I bring this up, that they're the best payers in the business, the government, because they have to pay.
Right.
It's like if you get your Social Security check out, come out of the computer, it'll spit out. A private customer will may make you wait weeks or months, and you will have to annoy and haggle to get your payment. So the government doesn't work that way. They can't because they have rules. So they're the best payers in terms of paying on them.
Well, that's because we're paying their taxes, so they have to give us that back at some point.
They have rules, and they have to follow their rules. There's not much discretion there.
So if when you're doing a new construction, that's probably a little easier than doing a renovation. A renovation, you can run into a lot of different issues that are unexpected, as opposed to a new construction.
Exactly. The unknown conditions in any project always pose the greatest risk to a cost overrun or delay. And you do have those in new construction, especially, during the foundation and excavation period. And also, believe it or not, when drawings get developed, and there's so many disciplines within those, sometimes hundreds and hundreds of drawings, there are unknown conditions in there. But when you get into an existing building and a renovation, which I'm involved with right now, you really don't know what's going on in that building. And it's impossible to uncover every condition in that building. Otherwise, you'd wind up tearing it all down and starting fresh. So there are many unknowns. It has to be approached aggressively and I would say prudently in terms of exploring and probing and surveying that existing building to uncover as much of the existing conditions as you can that will pose, potential for delays and cost overruns. But you can't expose everything. So it's probably like an 80-20 rule where you do 20% of the probing and you'll get 80% of that information, and you hope you made the right assumptions on the drawings. But yes, there's always that risk of something unexpected to crop up.
So the property owner that is looking at that renovation, would they call you in before they start a renovation? So you could
They should.
Oh, wow. Well,
they should always call me as soon as possible when they're just, when the project's a twinkle in their eye. I think they should make that phone call.
Well, it would make a lot of sense.
I have a client now, and they leased the space, and we're going to, and are renovating the entire building, and they did a due diligence inspection, and, they had thought they knew everything, and they were good to go immediately. And, the reality is we got in there and, there was a ton of issues that we didn't know about. And that process has to be done. You don't want that to happen once you already award that general contract and you're committed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's say you committed $5 million to a fixed condition, and then everything turns out, well, this isn't what we thought it was. And then, everything comes to a screeching halt and you're negotiating additional costs. So it's better to get the owner, as much information ahead of time as possible, as I described, with doing a proper investigation, probing of an existing building.
So you not only oversee building construction and renovations, as we've been talking about, but you also do fit-out projects, as you just mentioned?
Yes, very good. Yeah, I always tell people when I talk to them about my business that it's new construction, renovation, and fit-out. So it could be an office in, let's say, a vanilla space or a store. Anything that's retail or in an existing building that needs to be altered. My expertise really relates to anything that is in a building and that has construction. If it's a nuclear power plant or a dam, we don't go there. But if it's just building a building, renovating or fitting out space, that's part of our core competency in our everyday work.
So you have to have a background in a lot of different things to be able to do the consulting on a complete retrofit or a renovation or a new build, engineering, architect, right. Construction, all of these things, I would think.
What is your background, Barry?
Yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that. My background educationally is in mechanical engineering. And for most of my career, which I lost count of how long that is now, but it's been started in engineering but went straight to construction management within a year or two after college. And the one thing about being in the business as an employee, as a professional, is, you don't stay with one employer that long, in terms of over a decade, Mm-hmm. It's a rough business and you have to be nimble. And one of the benefits of that as a professional is you get a lot of experience. So in my first 10 or 15 years as a professional, I worked on new construction, renovation, interiors, estimating, purchasing. So, and as I got all that experience, I started realizing I could apply that, in a more global way, when I, had the ambition to start my own consulting business, and it helped. And you really do, need that range of experience when you're advising people. Otherwise, you could say, well, I could advise you on a new building, but I can't advise you on a renovation because I've never done that, or really have never done that. So it's good as a professional to get that broad range, and I've definitely had that, and I apply that ongoing.
How long is Schmidt Construction Consultant? When did you found this?
It's hard. That's another number that's hard for me to calculate, but it was in the year 2000, so it's been 13 or 14 years now, coming on 14 years. It's before 9/11, and we've been through several cycles. But like the city, which is, it's the best market to be in. The city always comes back strong, and that's why I've made my career in New York.
So
and, I think the market's coming on very strong right now. A matter of fact.
Yeah,
we see that here.
We see it all the time. You guys are booming in construction down there.
It's really accelerating. It's a couple of years ago, things were still very dour, even less than 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And with what we do, it's, the sales cycle isn't weekly or monthly. It's really quarter over quarter, or even year over year or more in terms of filling up that pipeline of sales. So we see the changes slowly, but it's been very noticeable, a dramatic, I'm sure everyone's seen it, but, a sea change in, let's say, market sentiment in the past 2 years, and now it's very bullish out there, for New York City at least. Real estate New York and construction New York is going very well.
Right.
Yes, well, Barry, let me ask you, if you're on a project, you're the consultant, and you're working with this general contractor, and the project has an overrun. It's gone way past its completion date. Who does the owner of the property go to? Who are they going to blame?
Well, we keep a tracking sheet, and there's a column, and it's called WFU.
Uh-huh.
And so that doesn't sound good.
No, and so we know who to blame, and it's never Schmidt Construction Consulting or the owner. But the reality is, that type of thing happens all the time. I mean, we don't promise perfection because, and some others in the world may, and it's not very realistic. We promise improved results and a better result. And so we have to be prepared, and my clients always have to be prepared for the inevitable change order, additional cost, potentially time extension. And the idea is to cast a net of oversight and detect those issues early so we can make decisions early and get the best outcome and not get, slammed at the 11th hour with a massive delay and overrun, which happens on projects, as people who've dabbled in the industry know happen. So that's what we try to avoid. And inevitably things happen, and we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it realistically, because if you don't accept as a client that something has changed for whatever reason and we have to deal with it, then there's only one alternative, is just to not finish. And my ambition on a project is always, I always say you can't just get to the 1 yard line in the red zone. We have to knock the ball through into the end zone. Mm-hmm. And that means scoring a touchdown. That means finishing the project, getting a TCO, and getting that facility occupied. So if it's going to take a little longer, a little more, as long as we're being prudent in our management and understand the issues, we want to detect these issues and address them as early as possible to get the best outcome. But the outcome at the end of the day, it has to be to finish the building and get all the city approvals and get that facility functioning. If it's a condo, get the condo sales, customers moved in. If it's a school, then the school has to get certified and have children come in. That's the goal, and that's what we always, as I say to some of my clients, that's our mission. And that's all our decisions have to be centered around what the mission, the end goal is, and to get the facility functioning and doing what it was meant to do in the first place. And we had a minimum cost and time factor.
So what would you say when you're, because you're figuring how to save them cost and and time doing these projects by being a little more efficient and watching over it, what would you say would be the percentage of cost that you would be saving by having you on the job as opposed to not having you on there?
Well, I believe there's no one out there better than doing what I do, but I'll make the comparison.
Now, is that a testimonial?
That's a hard fact. But if you compare no owner's representative, no owner's consultant, no owner's project manager to having an excellent owner's project manager, there is going to be a big return on that investment in having that professional there in terms of the risk mitigation, the risk to the big, problem, the 11th hour problem at the end that can't get resolved. That risk goes way, way down with having the right people there watching for the owner, and the actual result, hopefully that problem won't occur, but the savings of time and money will be substantial. Just having the owner's interests represented effectively versus not, I can't tell you on a percentage basis, but it's usually by experience, and frankly, we charge as we go, so our clients, if they don't buy this proposition, they don't need to continue with us. But those who go with us to the end know that they're way ahead because of the nature of the industry. It's just the nature of the process. That's not even the industry. It's the process. You can't have the same people sitting around like a GM plant or a Toyota plant, stamping out cookie cutter cars, $1 million a year, that you have that system down properly. Every project's a one-off. You don't know what's going on in the marketplace. You have to bid it out. You don't know who you're going to get, and it's unique. And because of that, there's a lot of risk. It's just the nature of contracting and construction and contracting in other industries. And the owner needs to have their interests represented in that process, or it won't flow the way they need it to flow.
With your expertise in this industry, do you ever get called in for litigation support?
Yes, it's happened. It's happened on several occasions, and it's a mixed bag. I've had one famous incident for myself in my career was a 5-alarm fire in actually the B. Altman building on a project 20 years ago when I was still working for others. And the fire got so hot that one of the firemen, it was a 5-alarm fire, and I was actually up there helping the firemen at least identify potential hazards and toxic gases, explosive gases in the area. And we were 2 floors under the fire floor, and I saw those guys go up there. It was very impressive, and almost like a combat situation. And the fire was so hot in this 100-year-old fur vault that was well insulated that the fireman's boot melted onto his and burnt his foot badly. And years later, I had to testify in a court case there, and told it like it was. And it really, I don't know who was liable because I just provided my expert testimony. There was another time I had 2 investors have litigation, and I testified, and I don't think it was ever. I just think the facts were found, and I don't believe anything negative transpired out of that. But it's happened here and there.
And why are you asking that, Eric?
I was just wondering because
do you have something that we should talk about?
I just know that as we had a guest on who was talking about lenders and borrowers who lenders when they loan for these constructions with 2008 happening in 2009 and people trying to default on some projects, that some projects were stalled in the middle, and that, at that case, litigation comes in, and who better to call than the guy who knows the industry best? So I just figured.
Of course.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I have been asked to testify as an expert witness. It hasn't come up too often, but it's definitely, I have some relationships now where that may be a more active role, and certainly it's something we can do. Actually, I was interviewed by an attorney on a case that was actually at the ground zero of the World Trade Center, but the particular issue was two I'd say nuts and bolts and shovel and turd that our expertise wasn't applicable, but that was an area we almost dabbled in. It was at
no, did you say shoveling?
Museum.
Yeah, Barry, did you say shovel and turd?
Yeah, I'm not dirt. No,
shovel and turd. I thought for sure.
I thought it was shoveling turd.
No, it was a D. But
okay, sorry. Yeah,
right. If a worker, it had to do about very particular work rules. This worker was injured, and that's not what we typically consult on. So that was not within our scope.
Well, that's a pretty big topic. This is Safety Week 2014 for the construction industry across the country, right?
Yeah, and safety is a major, major issue in construction, and frankly, it's gotten a lot better during my career, 25-year plus career. And I'll tell you an anecdote that in the 80s when I just started and we were erecting a steel building in Midtown, and lunchtime they broke out the 6-packs, and you had the iron workers walking steel and chugging some beers, and you'll never see that today.
Right.
You'll never see it. But that's just in 20 some odd years, and it happened actually long ago that changed. But it was. It's much better now, and it's very important. People can get really hurt, and I've seen certain incidents in my career, and it's very important to keep those workers safe. There's no question about it.
But I never heard of a steel worker falling off the building.
They don't, even when
even when they drink.
They've had some liquid launches. They're experts, and that's one of the most impressive things. I told you how impressed I was with the firemen in my career, but when I started working on new construction, I saw the steel workers and all the workers. They're the hardest working people out there, the blue collar guys, and that's one of the my admiration for that aspect of the business. Part of what kept me in this industry in my career. As I got a further business degree later after engineering, and I stuck with this industry, and that's part of what I love about it. It's the guys. They're a lot easier to get along with, actually, than some of the clientele out there.
Right. Down to earth is always a good thing.
Well,
they say, yes, I'm going to do it, or no, I can't do it, and then you get the straight shooting answer. And,
but actually, on the ride into the studio, me and Corey, our video producer, we were talking about how these guys get up, 50 stories, and they're walking up on those beams. I mean, now they have a lot of the safety strapping, but, probably going back 25, 30 years ago, I don't think they had that kind of straps, You
see pictures of them erecting the Empire State Building, for example, and a bunch of guys having some famous pictures out there. A whole bunch of guys sitting on a beam that's being rigged by a crane, and they used to throw hot rivets at each other and catch them, and that's how they did it in those days. But you never see that today. You would absolutely never see that today.
Hot rivets.
The Freedom Tower was well scaffolded. If you paid attention as it was being erected, that whole upper, the steel floor was enclosed in netting and scaffolding. And even when I worked on buildings, as I said, 10, 20 years ago when I started, they weren't as well enclosed as they are today. And so safety it's gotten the focus it definitely deserves.
Right.
Well,
I'm sure it's only going to continue to get better as technology increases and new ways to harness and to stable and to anchor the workers to these buildings or to the scaffolding and things like that.
There's been, it's not all technology. A lot of it's practice and, let's say, what's been the practice in the industry and traditional. And one area that's gotten a lot of attention recently is cranes. We had a bunch of crane collapses in New York, and that's gotten a lot of attention. I believe there's code changes being proposed now. I've read maybe in your publication about different rules for certification. So that's one area where the technology can, I'm sure, always be improved because that's a technical area.
Right.
But a lot of it's just practice and procedures. And years ago, they weren't adhered to as well as they are today.
So, Barry, if someone is interested in having a consultant on their job or their project, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, they could call me or email me or click on my website, and I made it difficult to forget. My website name is schmidtconcon.com, so that's short for Schmidt Construction Consulting, but it's SCHMIDT CON twice, short for Schmidt Construction Consulting, schmidtconcon.com.
That's a very catchy name.
It is. It's a very catchy word.
I would just go by a wish Schmidt Concon.
When I started, all my friends used to make fun of me. Maybe one of them listened to this interview and they'll know who it is.
We'll tell them.
But it's easy to remember once you master it.
Well, the interview is also being YouTube, so we're videotaping, so it'll be on YouTube as well. And you're not in the studio, but we'll have a picture of you. So,
oh, great!
And that's we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about what's going on in New York and the consultant of the construction business.
And what about a phone number? Could they reach you at a phone number?
Yes, thank you. My phone number is 212-495-9117.
Also,
always reach me there.
Before we go off the air, what is your geographic area? Do you only cover Manhattan? Do you cover all of New York? Do you cover the 5 boroughs, New Jersey?
My business life is always centered in Manhattan, but it radiates out. So it's Manhattan, the 5 boroughs, and the tri-state area generally, or whatever may make sense for a client beyond that. But everything in terms of marketing and projects themselves radiate out of Manhattan and into the wherever the market takes me, as I say. So Brooklyn, Harlem are very hot markets. I've done a lot of work there, and whatever geography makes sense for a customer, that's where I'll go.
Perfect. Thank you.
We thank you for coming on, Barry.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and it was very enjoyable.
And that was Barry Schmidt. It's the founder and principal of Schmidt Construction Consulting. And the show is brought to you today by the New York Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 25 years. Find us at NYREJ.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nyrej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nyrej.com.